Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking some time off today to learn a little bit about data analytics. Thanks, Amanda, for that wonderful introduction. I'm also a trainer. So I'm from a company called FYT. You can see from my picture there, from the little by FYT. Now, FYT is we are we're a consulting firm, and we eat, sleep, drink, and everything about data analytics, right? So we do data analytics training. So we also work with Aventis a lot, both in the School of Management as well as in the other sister arm. We do lots of training with them, and we also do consulting. And we also teach in Civil Service College. So those of you who are local and from Singapore, you probably know about our civil service. They've got a training arm, and they also provide training, and we work with them as well. All right. So today we're going to talk a little bit about data analytics, and let's get down to the first slide. Now, I think at this point in time, everybody would have known that your data is something that you cannot do without, right? So even in the morning when you get up, you probably reach out for the phone more than talking to your spouse, or even some people don't even refer to their phone before they run to the toilet. So we know that tons of data is being generated. So if you look at this 2020 Internet Minute, you can see that there's lots of data created. For example, like WhatsApp, there are like 59 million messages sent in 1 minute. That's the amount of data we generate, right? And if you look at, say, tweeting, for example, there's 194,000 tweets being done per minute. And if you look around, there's tons of data being generated. In fact, it's been projected by IDC. So IDC collects all this IT information. And they say that by 2018, 33 zettabytes are being 33 zettabytes of data is being collected or generated. So you say, Michael, what's a zettabyte? I know it's a gigabyte. I know it's a terabyte. What's a zettabyte? So zettabyte, just for information, is, if you look at right below, if your eyes are good enough, is 10 to the power of 21. So it's actually 1 and 21 zeros. That's a zettabyte. You say, okay, fine. So what does that mean? What's 10 to the power of 21? So let me give you an idea, right? So since the day that World Wide Web started, we've reached 1 zettabyte of data on the internet in 2016 September. So from the day 1 to September in 2016, 1 zettabyte of data was generated. So it's okay, imagine how big it is, right? But then from 16 to 18, 33 zettabytes, right? And in 2025, it's 175 zettabytes. So we're growing like crazy, 61% growth, in fact. And where did they all come from, right? So if you look at in the second line, 51% comes from internet IoT devices. So a lot of data is generated everywhere, right? It's generated in your fridge, on your TV, on your phone, of course, and there's tons of data being generated. Even people who do agriculture, for example, they collect data about the field, the water, the plants, all connected to that, right? So, and about half of that is being stored in public data. So, and you in your own work, in your team, you generate lots of data as well, right, at work. So what have you used that data for? Right? Have you just left it there, or have you actually used that to maximize it for a certain purpose? All right, let me tell you a little bit of story of Walmart. Now, Walmart, most of you would know. Those of you who've been to the US, right? Singapore doesn't technically have Walmart, but those of you who have shopped in Bugis, and in the past there was Seiyu, and now there's BHG. So BHG, apparently Walmart has some shares connected to that, right? So Walmart in the US is a super huge hypermart. They sell everything under the sun. In fact, they've been into the data piece since long ago, before we were even talking about data in Singapore. And interestingly, they collect data using the cash register, right? The humble cash register has tons of data about purchases and all that kind of stuff. So one day, some senior executive said, and everybody can look at this slide, right? This is actually a hurricane coming towards Florida. That's not Malaysia, okay? That's Florida in the US. So there's a hurricane coming, and the senior executive said, what do people buy just before a hurricane? So they want to know, because they want to of course, capitalize on that and keep people to buy more. So interestingly enough, people, in general, you have guys, and please don't say toilet paper, okay, because that's probably not the first thing on their mind, but they would buy, food kind of stuff, torchlight kind of stuff, because rain, and they probably have electricity being cut off. So in this scenario, what they did was they found out that they wanted to have the two things that stood out. Something came out, a particular item was on sale for 700%. So 7 times the sale normally. So before hurricane, it went up 7 times and versus the normal time. And the other thing was something that was top selling. Okay, so what happened was that these two things came along. So they found out that for that item on the first one, it went up 700%. That's called a strawberry Pop-Tart, right? So it's a rectangular little thing, and you can fit it into a, what do you call a toaster, and warm it up. So that's and absolutely, I went to research on this, right? There's absolutely no nutritional value. It's probably just sugar, and carbs, right? And but you went up 7%. So I figured out that it's probably comfort food that people, it's like when you're under all these bad weather and all that, you want to reach out for comfort food. And all of us have got comfort food, right? So my comfort food was Nyonya Kueh, So everybody has a comfort food. Another friend had fish ball as a comfort food. Now the other thing that is top selling is the 6-pack or beer, right? So I always tell people, maybe in the US they drink more beer than water. So there's data, there's the insight, and then what do you do with that? Okay, so in that, and I suggest you think through what would you do if you were the CEO. So in their case, in general, people will say stock up now, right? Stock up. So what they do is they've got all these trucks sending these products from the other branches and get them coming all the way through, sending the trucks speeding down the highway to stock up in this Florida area to make sure they have enough, right? So stocking up is one of them. And possibly, I would say, if you are a salesperson, you probably say increase price, okay? So, but then of course there are repercussions if you increase price. And then possibly also you want to arrange these products to be at the front counter, right? So when they come into the store, they are just there waiting for you to pick up, and they don't have to go hunting around, okay? And maybe even do bundling. So anyway, whatever decisions you make, something has been made out of it. You need to, after you've got an insight, you want to do something with that information or with that insights. Okay, a decision has to be made. Okay, so data itself does not create value. Okay, so like I said, if you knew sales was 700% and you don't do anything about it, it doesn't get you enough value. So the value is only created when a decision is being made based on that data-driven insight. Okay, and that's what comes to the definition of analytics. And if you go into the into Google and look for definition of analytics, you probably have like 1,000 different definitions, right? So, but for us, we believe analytics should cover 3 components. So there's the data component, right? So obviously you need data, good data, right? Not just normal data, not just data, but good data, clean data. And then from there, you drive an insight of it. So in the Walmart case, that's where you've got the cash registers, the data, and the insight was that pre-hurricane, they like to have strawberry Pop-Tarts, it went up 700%, and the insight was that beer was the top selling item. And then subsequently, most people will stop short of the decision. Most of us will, analyze data and then we look at it, oh, we got insight, right? And it stays on our table. But we believe the true value comes from driving a decision out of it. So you have to do something with the insight, be it stock up, be it increase price, whatever it is, something has been done out of it, and that's where you get the most value out of it. Okay, so this is another view of that. Now, in each of these, right, this is what we call the analytics value chain. So from data, just with data, you can do data processing, mining, exploring, and analysis, right? So that's good in itself, but you get more value if you move on to insights. That's where you actually, for example, establish a context from what you see in the data and connect that with the business. And you also visualize the data. That's where you actually get the data explained in graphs, in dashboards, infographics, kind of stuff. So that's where the data visualization comes in. And if you add on to it the decision part where you do business storytelling. That's where you take all the data and you want to get the visuals done and get them connected into a story, into a concise, coherent, and compelling story, right? The three C's, to make sure that the message gets across to whoever's asking about the problem and get them to drive some change, a decision, or even ask more questions. Okay, so that's the three steps in analytics. Now, a lot of times organizations do analytics, and despite many years of investments, a lot of them struggle to realize the true value of it. And that's because most people focus on the hard data skills. They just take data, analyze it, what we call the analysis paralysis, keep analyzing it, and it stop short, right? So like I said, the data storytelling part is the one that actually connects and gets that decision-making going. If you look at the chart on the left, to drive change, we believe there are three things you need to have, right? So good data, you need to have also good visuals, visuals that communicate, and most of us are visual people. In fact, if you look at, if you like most of us, right, Facebook, if you put a picture, you don't put a picture, you actually, the likes will have gone up like at least twice or three times, right? So there's a visual part. And then there's a narrative, which is the storytelling part. So the storyline, right? I always tell people in our training, we say that data is not the story. You know, a lot of us are like, you know, very good in data. We analyze to the cows come home. But after you analyze it, you just throw it as part of your presentation. And there's no connecting story, right? So I always tell people data is not the story. Data supports your story. You need to have a storyline, and that's where the data comes in to support your messaging. Okay, so why analytics and why now? Like what's the big deal, right? Why are we talking about analytics now? Right? So we found that there are at least three reasons why analytics has now is the big thing. Is the big thing. Number one is digitization has changed the landscape. Now, everybody think of just a couple years back, maybe 5 years back. I recall I was in Chinatown trying to queue for a taxi, and boy, we're just, you know, the queues are long, and I've got this, you know, this foreign gentleman in front of me, and he's quite frustrated, right? He says, obviously a tourist. He says, why is this so people get a taxi here, right? And then in the step of a moment, Uber comes along, and then Grab comes along, and then it changes the entire landscape. Suddenly, the queues are, the people queue is shorter than the taxi queue, right? In the past, the taxis are very few, far in between, and then the people queues are long, and so you just turn it around, all because of digitization, right? So think Uber, think Grab. The other thing is Netflix, right? So most of us used to, movies is like you buy a ticket, you choose the seat, you go into a movie and you sit down and just watch it and you really enjoy it, right? And suddenly Netflix come along and you can binge watch at the comfort of your home. Like no more having to queue for movies, no more having, you know, the aircon duct falling on top of you if they haven't serviced long enough. Those of you familiar with that story. So digitization indeed has changed the landscape, has lower barriers to entry, right? So these are just two examples. The second reason why analytics is big now is because of the social economic changes, right? People are living longer, living better, living richer, and our skills are changing like crazy, okay? No longer do we, in our parents' days where they say, you know, get a job, work for 30, 40 years for a company, get loyal, and then retire. Okay, gone were those days, right? Now, if you work for like 3, 4 years for a company, you've been there for damn long. so it's very different now. So people, the employable skills and all that are changing very quickly. And this is thing which, of course, the government has been promoting, which is lifelong learning, right? So throughout your life, you have to keep learning and learning, which is why I guess you guys are in this seminar, because you want to learn more about analytics. And that's what we do. We have to keep learning because the needs of the job is changing now, right? Just like if you guys are following the government is pushing a lot of analytics training. They're pushing a lot of people to be aware, because right now, no more is it suitable or enough that you make decisions based on your gut feel or based on your experience. Now you have to make decisions based on real data that says the right direction as well, okay? And the third reason why analytics is also big is how work gets done. So now talent is very mobile and we compete globally, right? And none other than in COVID, you realize that, the whole mobile situation and competing globally is changing. And there's this gig economy, right? So you guys know, gig economy means that it's those short jobs, and they are, uh, there's no promotional aspect. They just jobs, right? For example, delivery, like things like Grab, things like we order food from Food Panda. So the delivery people are, these are called gig economy, or even Grab drivers as well. That's part of the gig economy versus full-time employment. Of course, you get a lot of flexibility. You can the more you do, the more you earn. Okay, but there's no, what do you call it? There's no, I won't say there's no future, but then there's no progression, no progress path for that. Okay, and also automation will eliminate some jobs while creating some as well. Okay, so because of these different scenarios, many organizations turn to analytics to make some sense of the world and make informed decisions what to do next. All right, so analytics is not new, right? Okay, and probably Amanda's just given away my age, saying that I worked for more than 25 years. I remember back in those days where I was studying it, I did com science, by the way, in NUS. And even that, back in those days, we are already doing things called analytics, so to speak. But it, it's just, in Chinese, they call it 纸上谈兵. It's just studying that on paper. You don't really practice it because of three reasons. Number one, data, right? Back in those days, data is not so prevalent in terms of digital data. HR probably kept their documents in the cupboard and under lock and key. But then, World Wide Web came along in 1991, iPhone came in and more mobile phones, and then there's a lot of data being generated globally. Okay, because if data is not digital, then it's hard to do analytics. Secondly, is technological advances. This is the computing power, right? A lot more faster now, what 3G, 4G, 5G. And then storage costs as well. In the past, you buy a little chip, it costs a couple $100, right? And that's like storing maybe like 500 megabytes, something like that. But now it's a lot cheaper, and you can go out there and just get a terabyte hard disk for like a couple of, like, maybe $200-300. You can get that, right? And then there's also what we call a GPU now, instead of the usual CPU we're familiar with. There's this thing called GPU, right? So graphic processing unit. In fact, there's something even bigger than that now. So GPUs are used for deep learning as well. So there's technology, there's data, and then there's also algorithms as well, right? So there's all this, if you see that, there's IBM Watson was beats Jeopardy, and these are algorithms that the system are learning by itself, and they're getting more and more intelligent. Okay, so because of these three things, right, analytics is now getting more upfront, getting more powerful, more attention. All right, so there's this world of machine learning, artificial intelligence, which is not the area that I'm an expert in, but I just want to put it in perspective, right? So AI, of course, is trying to imitate the human brain, and then within AI, there's machine learning, where the machine learns how to react to situations, and there's supervised learning, unsupervised learning, or reinforced learning. That's part of it, right? And then within that, there's also deep learning, neural networks kind of stuff. Now, this deep learning, it's all these are among us actually we're facing every day. For example, things like Siri, right? Those of you who own an iPhone, Siri, or Google Home, or even chatbots, right? All these are part of this deep learning, and facial recognition as well. So how you use your phone and you look at your phone and it turns it on. All these are part of that neural network. Okay, so all these are part of the artificial intelligence family, and data science, data analytics sort of overlap some of these, and yet not part of it, right? So what we call IA versus AI. So AI is the machine handles everything by itself. Okay, no human intervention. IA, on the other side, provides the analytics, and from there, the human still comes in and get some sense out of it and make some decisions based on it. Okay, if you ask me, I mean, AI is progressing like crazy in a lot of countries, right? Especially in China, they're really pushing a lot in AI, but it's still not to the point of taking over our jobs yet. So So at this point in time, I think AI works very well in some areas, but in other areas, it still needs a human intervention. I don't know about your experience with chatbot, but I have got bad experiences. Every time I talk to a chatbot, I give up. You know, that day I was just trying to go to I think DBS also has this chatbot, right? And I tried to do it. No way. In the end, I had to actually call the telephone because the chatbot couldn't answer my questions. All right. So analytics, let's get back to this. So we are on the right-hand side, right? That circle on the right side here, the data analytics, data science part. Now, what are the types of analytics? Let me just quickly go through. So essentially, there are three types of analytics. There's descriptive. So descriptive is something we are very familiar with. We do this back in school days, right? This is your statistics, your averages, your trending, something what happened in the past. So you take past data, you analyze it, and you describe what happened, right? The trends are going up, sales are going up, our profits are going down, the kind of thing, right? So that's descriptive, which you're very familiar with. Then there's the predictive part. This is where after that, it's like, so what? If I continue doing like this, what will happen in the future? So this is where you talk about what will happen, the predicting that part. Okay, what will happen? And then another type, which is called prescriptive. So prescriptive comes from the word prescribe or prescription. So it's just like you go and see a doctor, doctor prescribe you medicine, right? So prescriptive actually decides what to do next. So they tell you what to do, okay? So you have the history, and then they sort of predict in the future what's going to happen, and then they sort of describe what you need to do, okay? So this, and most of our analytics, the IA part will be descriptive and predictive, whereas the machine learning part is here, okay? So this part, you need the machine to learn how to predict and to prescribe. And you say, okay, Michael, this is like, okay, so how does that happen in our daily life, okay? And this is happening every day, right? So everybody, I don't know, usually in my class, I'll get everybody show their hands. Have you got, did anybody stay up late to buy on 11/11, your shopping, your online? And I stayed up, right? Even though I had to teach the next day, I stayed up and so I've got my little discounts from Lazada. So this is an example of all the types of analytics going on, right? Buying online. So under descriptive, that's where they collect information about you. So things like your gender, your age, occupation, and race. And then in transaction, they find out about what did you buy? What's your threshold budget, right? So so for some people, they will buy at any price, right? As long as the discount is good. For some people, they will restrict their spending, okay? So maybe they don't have that much money. So they're like, okay, I'll buy anything. Every time I buy less than $100. So they know, system know, they will study you and say, what's your threshold and all that. And then the psychology part, right? So what you like and don't like. So what you do in Facebook, what you do, what pages you go to, what websites you go to, they collect that psychology information about you. And also like some surveys, right? So I don't know if you guys go to YouTube, sometimes halfway they ask you to do a survey. Have you heard of this toothpaste, that toothpaste, where do you hear this? And then, okay. So that's also collecting surveys about you and what you like or dislike. So based on that, they will generate a predictive analytics, a propensity model. Okay, this is where they will get all that and then try and group you into customer sets, right? And then what's next is the prescriptive part. So based on that, they'll say, okay, so let's, for simple sake, let's classify it into three groups of customers, right? So there's a sort that will like spend at no control. They will buy like crazy. These people, they give you 25% off, you're likely to buy. You will buy more and more and more, right? And then there's the other group, which is like, in Hokkien, we say 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, those who just like to go around looking but don't buy, they won't give you any discount because you're unlikely to buy. And then there's people who are in between. They'll say, okay, we'll give them 10% off and likely to buy and give them some rewards, like I think in Lazada, they give you what, coins or something like that. So you can get there and maybe you can use that exchange for certain stuff. Okay, that's the B part, right? So you look at it, that in one scenario, they actually do all the three types of analytics. Okay. Now, like I always say, analytics is more than a thought, more of a thought process than data-driven one. So we believe that if you just do analysis, the statistic part, it's pretty easy. You can get a data analyst or data scientist come and do the analysis, right? But the key thing for us as business people is to frame the issue. So we have to start defining the problem, develop hypothesis, what caused it, and then start collecting data regarding that, and then use analysis to prove or disprove that, and then interpret results, drive some insights over it, and then finally communicate and influence. Now you see there's a cycle. So in analytics, it's not a simple 6-step. In fact, it's probably multiple loops, right? Sometimes after you reach the end and you realize, oh, maybe the problem is not defined correctly and we need to redefine it or zoom in certain areas and redo the cycle, and usually do a couple of times. All right. Okay, foundations for analytics. Now, for analytics to happen, there are a couple of things that need to occur. You need to have them, right? So number one, of course, is data. So that form the foundation of analytics program, right? Without it, there's no analytics. So it's just not data. Data is also what do you need? What do you have? Okay, sometimes what you need is not what you have. And then even you have it technically in the organization, do you have access to that? Are people willing to give you that access, right? So other departments, maybe silo, they may not give you data. So that's also an important part. So data in itself is just in its own, there's just so much about it, right? So cleaning data, most data analysts will tell you they spend about 50% cleaning up data, because you don't get real data, don't get data that's cleaned up or correct, then it's garbage in, garbage out, right? Second is technology. So to enable analytics, certainly you don't do it manually. You need some form of technology that helps you to do that, right? So of course, Excel is a good tool. So Excel is part of technology. And in fact, Excel, I always tell people, is a good place to start. So without spending too much money on a lot of tools and all that, Excel is a good place to start and explore your requirement. But on top of that, there's a lot of specialized tools for analysis. There's Python, there's R. There's also visualization tools, things like Tableau, Power BI, ClickView. These are, and then of course, together with SAP and Salesforce.com, they've also got the analytical tools, right? So regardless of what tool, you definitely need some technology or tool to help you do that automation or the analysis. Then there's framework. So framework is like what I say if you do cooking, it's like your recipe. It puts things together, right? So that's a framework. So a good example of framework would be a SWOT analysis. So most of you would know SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. So that's a framework to which you try to put things together and try to understand the whole scenario. So frameworks try to organize your thoughts. So if you're from sales, you may have a sales life cycle. If you're from manufacturing, you may have your little framework. So essentially, we need to have frameworks to organize the analysis, to organize the data, the metrics, and all that. And of course, finally, you need people, right? So people to analyze, and people to organize the thought, people to frame the problem, people to then feed into for example, a dashboard. So after you create a dashboard, somebody has to use it, the user, right? That's the people part. And one element here is cultural readiness. I couldn't overemphasize that sometimes we're so focused on the technical part, we forgot that culturally we must be ready to do analytics, right? So for example, if you're a part of management, you want to always keep asking, like, you say A, B, C, D, E, you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where's the proof? What is your basis of saying that? And that questioning that you keep asking that question from your staff, that's when you will drive an analytical culture, right? So imagine if you are, after you attend an analytics course, or you are spend all your energies analyzing data and trying to come up with certain findings, and go to your boss, and your boss says, okay, good, thank you. And then he or she will then decide based on his or her gut feel. And then you like, how would you feel, right? You're like, okay, all right, never mind, next time I'll do it again. If you do it 2 or 3 times and your boss keeps on not trying to use this way of thinking, of using data to make decisions, then you end up really not wanting to do analytics anymore, right? Because it's going to be like, what? I'm wasting my time. So some people, when they do analytics, they think that just hiring a data scientist and they're already doing analytics. A lot of times when the culture is not ready, when the company is not ready to accept analytics as part of the working life, your data scientist is going to be just disillusioned and then will quit. Okay, so in fact, some organizations now are so big into analytics, they even have, we have got the CIO, CFO, now the CAO. There's a chief analytics officer as well in large organizations to drive analytics culture, to drive that everything you do must be based on information or data. Okay. All right. So, and this just leads on to what I just mentioned. So, it was long thought that the benefits of analytics only require data, technology, and right talent. But in like just a survey that was just last year, found that the obstacles to being data driven, you see the large part here, the yellow part, is people. Right? People is a big obstacle to data analytics. Okay, to being data driven. And we look at the other chart, the one with the donut. You find that cultural resistance, you found there is lack of organizational alignment and understanding data as assets. So you realize that after all these things, right, the things that are missing are the soft parts. We focus so much on technology and focus so much on data that the things that's missing is the organizational alignment, cultural resistance, understanding how to deploy analytics strategically, and executive support, right? So right from the top. Okay, so as part of the training that we do, and even as you if you sign up for the data science program, where FYT plays a part in delivering the lessons, we go beyond concepts of to just concepts. So we don't just discuss that on paper. We actually go into the application and solving real problems with data. Okay, so the approach versus if you attend a course online and all that, a lot of these are just theory. But what we do is we actually get there. So what you see that in the center, that 6-step cycle, that's I would say the backbone of the entire data analytics program, or all the stuff that we teach is around this, right? So we try to bring in frameworks and structure and step by step to actually get you to understand what's going on. So for example, look at the defining the problem, right? Problem statement. So we need to define what's the problem, because if you do not get the problem right, then you're barking up the wrong tree. Okay. And then in the hypothesis, that's where we talk about, okay, what could impact the problem. So we brainstorm. So you look at in this case, the test score is an example of a student score. So this is something that we did as part of a consulting with permission from the organization. And of course, we doctored the data a little bit. This was talking about a student, it was an NGO. It was NGO, and they were trying to help students with the tuition. And they found that they've been trying to help these students, but unfortunately, some people are still not doing well. Okay, so we did an analysis for them. We went through the whole analytics step by step and found out at the end of the day, they were trying to select students based on housing type, as well as, I can't remember, yeah, something else, right? So what came out from the analytics was they missed out something. It was actually students from broken homes. So students from homes where the caregiver does not form a complete family. And these students, using a regression analysis, right, we found that students with caregivers who are divorced tend to do poorly. So it's statistically significant. So as a result, the organization took that into consideration and changed their criteria of selecting the students. And subsequently, they were able to then drive up the scores. So overall, the student scores gone up, right? So this is the brainstorming part. And then if you see, after we've got all the various factors, then we start to collect data. Right? So data comes in step 3. We don't start with data. So unless you're a data scientist where you take data and manipulate and see patterns, usually we start with the problem. So after we've got all the data, we do the analysis. So analysis, typically what we do is we do descriptive and we do inferential, which is also the predictive part. And then from there, the interpretation. So that's again another soft one, right? So the hard skills are in collecting data and analysis, but interpreting is very big. This is where we talk about business acumen. This is where we say, so what? So now that I see this data, does this make sense? Apply that to the business. Does this make sense? Does it work? Does it not work? and then interpret it and get some insight out of it, right? So after that, then we communicate influence. That's where we start to tell the story. How do you piece it all together with a concise, coherent story, something that's short and sharp, something that's makes sense, something that's compelling, right? That people want to make something out of it and drive a decision, okay? And then you go back again. So you notice that we will use simple structures, but at the end of the day, it's something that you can apply. So when we teach this in classes, a lot of our participants are excited because these are not rocket science. You can actually learn these things, right? It's not difficult, but the difficulty, of course, is to apply in business, right? And that's where we will use case studies and all that to help you appreciate how to apply these 6 steps in your business issues. Now, on top of that, we will also look at, we use dashboards as well, right? So I always tell people that if you say you are in the analytics journey, you are actually, your company is doing analytics, then you jolly well have some dashboard somewhere, okay? Now, the dashboard doesn't have to be on some expensive tool. It could also be an Excel. So what you see here, I believe, is done on Excel, right? Or you can also do it, you can also have a dashboard on Tableau or Power BI. And part of the program that we teach in the data science program, we will teach you Power BI and Tableau. So those are very up and coming. In fact, Tableau is like the in thing now. If you look at the they do this analysis on the quadrants, and they found that Power BI and Tableau are the top most effective tools in the market today, right? So we will be using these tools to then build the dashboard, and through the dashboard, analyze the business, right? So there'll be a case study where you will create the dashboard, and then from there, you will then analyze and answer business questions. There'll be questions to answer what is happening in the company, what are they doing well, they're not doing well, where should we focus on, what's the challenge, and kind of stuff. So there'll be case studies and stuff to look at. And so you build it, you don't not only build it, because building it is quite technical, but it's easy because it's really drag and drop. But not just building a dashboard, but learning how to use it, right? The power of dashboard is not just graph. Actually, with graphs and multiple filters, is many to many. And that's where you can fully analyze the data and drive insights, and from insights, drive decisions.